Hey guys, welcome to Enneanerds, an Enneagram podcast. My name is Bethany. I'm type 5.
And hi, you guys. My name is Grace, and I am a type 7.
So, this podcast is just a fun, quirky type of podcast. And yeah, we just want to have a good time. And today, we're talking about probably the best, most fun thing that could ever happen a zombie apocalypse. We are gonna do a little bit of role playing here, and we're gonna see which number would last the longest in a zombie apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this was your idea or my idea, Grace, but I'm excited to talk about this.
I am too. This is maybe like the most excited I've ever been for one of our episodes. And you'll understand why once we get to 7, because
Well, you're in luck because in the first bracket is 7,
okay.
and so what I did was I randomized different pairings, and basically it's like tournament style zombie apocalypse, and I randomized the pairings, and Grace and I are both going to assume the identity of a number, and talk about why we think we would survive longer.
Mm-hmm.
If we cannot come to a conclusion, then we're each going to roll a d20 dice, which is a D&D type of dice where it has 20 sides, and then whichever number has the higher number will move on in the bracket until there is only one remaining. Okay. I mean, I think that all the numbers could survive a zombie apocalypse, but I think some numbers are just better prepared for a zombie apocalypse than maybe some other numbers would be. So, in our first bracket, we have the type 3, which is the achiever, versus the type 7, which is the enthusiast. Now, you're a 7. I assume you want to be the 7 in this scenario.
100%, yes.
So tell me why you think the 7 will last longer than the 3.
Okay, so I have thought long and hard about this long before we decided to do this episode, because I'm like a huge Walking Dead fan. And so like the idea and Zombieland, I love both of those.
That's a good movie. Yeah.
So I think I've always thought that I would absolutely thrive in a zombie apocalypse. And when like COVID-19 happened and everyone was like, the world is ending, I was like, well, if zombies start popping up, I'm gonna crush it. Okay. Like I think I would thrive.
Tell me how you think you'd crush it.
Well, okay. For one, 7s, because we are, the adventurous type, we try lots and lots of different things. And so I feel like on average, 7s have a lot of skills in their back pocket. They might not be masters at these skills, but they've at least tried a lot of things. And so, when it comes to like weaponry, I bet most 7s have gone shooting. I bet they've gone axe throwing. I bet, they've tried a martial arts class. And so I think we would have a whole lot of skills that we can adapt. We're also very good at adapting. Put us in different friend group, put us in a different location, in a different country. We can make it work. And so if all of a sudden the world is ending and there are zombies trying to eat me, I can adapt to that. Okay. I can adapt. Okay. I also think that although 7s are, and this is maybe a negative thing, although 7s are very social, we also are we're okay on our own, and we don't get like super, super attached. I mean, of course, like I would want to protect my husband and my best friend and things like that. But
the best friend she's referring to is me, by the way.
Yes. Because we'll get to 5s. I don't know how you guys will do.
Who we're in the bracket with.
But anyway, I don't like some of the other numbers we get to. I think some of their downfalls will be they will be self-sacrificing, and to be totally honest with you, I don't know if 7s are like that. We're going to protect ourselves. And so I think we will fight tooth and nail. Our fight or flight like response will be really strong, and we will fight real hard to make sure that we survive.
Right. I just want to remind you of an experience that we had one time. We were volunteering at church or whatever, and we had to knock over these barrels of water. Do you remember this?
I do, and I was too weak. I couldn't do it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true.
You're the only one that couldn't do it.
Well, it's true. It's true.
I did it.
But can I also remind you that I walked from Mexico to
Oh, you did.
Canada
You're right. You're
up
right.
and
You're
down
right.
giant mountains with like 45 pounds on my back.
You're right. You're
So,
right. You're right. You're tough. You're tough.
yeah.
I just want you to always remember there's one moment in history where I was tougher than you.
Well, in the zombie apocalypse, if we come upon a barrel filled with water, I will allow you to knock it over. But all the other tough things I will handle.
Okay. So that's your case for 7.
Yeah.
I think 7s are definitely tough. I do think they're not self-sacrificing, and so they will definitely preserve themselves. Absolutely. So I'm going to be the 3 in this scenario, and I have not prepared for any of these beforehand. This is just me spitballing. 3s are achievers. They're natural born leaders, right? So in a zombie apocalypse, I think a 3 is most likely going to find a group of people, maybe even vulnerable people, and gather them as their like sheep,
Okay.
and kind of be their leader.
Oh, okay.
Because threes are very smart. They're very, they're very bright. They know how to lead. So I feel like they would lead a group of people, and then they wouldn't have to do any of the fighting. Like I imagine a 3 sitting like kind of in a throne underneath a tent or something, and they're just kind of like telling people what to do. So I don't even think that a 3 would actually fight in a zombie apocalypse. I think they would have other people do it for them. And so because of that, I think they would last longer than most people. But
interesting.
I mean, there is a downside where there could be like a coup, especially if they're like a corrupt 3 and they get overthrown and die that way. I also don't think 3s are super self-sacrificing. And so they would do whatever it takes to survive. And so it's interesting pair being in a 3 and a 7 in the first one, because I think there are some similarities there.
Yeah.
As far as like making sure that they're okay, and but I do see it going a different route as far as like a 3 being the leader, and then having other people fighting for them. So I don't know if you've convinced me that a 7 would beat a 3.
I feel like kind of what you were saying, that a 3 might last for a while because of their leadership, but if they're not going to go out and do any fighting, then I think that their people will rebel against them, and eventually maybe the 3 wouldn't even be killed by zombies. They might just be killed by their people.
It's interesting.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I do think we're going to have to roll for this one.
Okay.
So we each have a virtual D20 dice pulled up on a webpage, and we're going to roll, and then whoever has the higher number.
Okay.
And this is truly honor system. I can't see her screen. She can't see mine.
Do I hit go or do I hit start?
Hit roll at the top.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Oof. Okay. I got a 5.
I got a 4.
Oh no! 7's knocked out.
I don't agree with this whatsoever.
I'm very sorry, Grace.
It's okay.
I thought you were going to get higher than a 5. 3 moves on, and the way the bracket was dealt was 3 is now going to be against a 1. So, Grace, I'll let you argue for the 1.
We know that 1s are idealistic, and so I think they would have a lot of ideas on how to rebuild a new society, and I think they could be very inspiring. I think both 1s and 3s would probably end up in leadership positions. So I think the difference is how people would follow them. I think 1s maybe. This is hard to advocate because, to be totally honest with you, I think 3s would go past 4s or past 1s.
Interesting.
Because I think 1s would maybe not be as adaptable. I don't know.
I think 1s are I think ones are leaders by example a lot of the time.
Oh,
So
that's a good point.
I feel like they're less likely to get killed by their own people.
Yeah.
As far as just because a lot of ones I know tend to lead by example and are not afraid to get their hands dirty a
Yeah.
lot of the time. So I feel like they're not most likely to get killed by their own people, like a 3 could.
Uh-huh.
But you're right, they're not. I don't know, they're not super adaptable. But I do imagine ones probably similar to the 7 have done research on zombie apocalypse,
Yeah.
and like are at least
That's true.
somewhat prepared.
Yeah, that's true.
I do think they could also be a leader, like Captain America. This is who I imagine Captain America in a zombie
Mhm.
apocalypse, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
And so I think Captain America would do very well in a zombie apocalypse.
Mhm.
It's like Captain America versus Iron Man. Who would last longer?
Mhm.
Oh, I think Captain America would last longer.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. And I think ones are more self-sacrificing than threes. And so, and I mean, you see it in zombie TV shows and zombie movies, is if the leader is really beloved, then, their people will like sacrifice themselves for them.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas if it's like a selfish dictator, then they won't. So,
True.
yeah, maybe ones would win. Wow.
I think I'm gonna leave with a 1 on this one.
Okay, I think I've been convinced. Yeah, I'll go with
Okay.
one.
Okay. All right. 1, you get to move on. The next little battle that we have, which I don't know how this is gonna go for me, is the 5 and the 2. Who would last longer? I'm gonna make the case for the 5.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you make the case for it too. I think a 5 would last longer than a 2. Because first of all, 5s are very good at like being invisible. We can kind of disappear into a wall. Nobody knows we're there. Okay. And so in an instance where there might be an attack, I feel like a 5 would be good at kind of going invisible and disappearing. And a zombie wouldn't even know they were there. Also, 5s are very, very smart, as we know. So I feel like a 5 would have value in the fact that they're very smart and that they could be coming up with the antidote for the zombie virus.
Yeah.
And so I feel like they may not be the best fighter, but they could possibly have people that are protecting them because there's so much value in the knowledge.
Right.
Also, I don't know any 5 that hasn't researched in zombie apocalypse and what they would do. So there's already research that has started, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were 5s out there who have like a doomsday, like panic room kind of situation. Just because 5s get obsessed, we go down these rabbit holes, and we're not going to stop until we are satisfied. So I think the 5 would last longer than the 2, just simply because there is value in knowledge. They are very good at hiding, disappearing. The downside maybe is that 5s aren't super social, so they may not actually end up in a social circle. Yeah. Who knows? They're also not super self-sacrificing either. So I don't. That's what I think.
I'm just picturing for like all of these numbers, I'm finding a Walking Dead character that fits these different numbers, and I'm thinking about whether they lasted or not. So 2s, I think their greatest asset is how relational they are. They would have a group of very loyal people, and those people would love them and appreciate them and would want to protect them. 2s, however, are extremely self-sacrificing.
Yes.
And I feel that I could absolutely see them sacrificing themselves for their group of people that they love. So that's a little bit of a catch-22, I guess. Yeah. I feel like 2s would make themselves very vital to their social group. Because they're kind of the same as 5s. They might not necessarily, you might not picture 2 being like the strongest fighter, but I think they would contribute to their group.
They make sure everybody had snacks.
Yeah, snacks and
make sure everybody has weapons.
And medication and things like that.
Don't forget your spear. I just picture my my mom in a zombie apocalypse,
Yeah,
and she would
yeah.
just be like, Bethany, don't leave without your like goggles and your gloves and your spear and like so.
But I mean, that would really endear them, and I feel like people would want to protect them. So I think they would last a long time because of that.
They're the heart. Twos are the
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting matchup because it's like the heart and the head and like which one
Ooh,
is more
oof,
important and which
oof.
one whereas like I feel like 7 and 3 and 1 and 3 they're all kind of like bringing the same kind of energy, so it's hard to
True,
fight those. But like
true.
these two are extremely different
They
and
are.
um
I don't think you've convinced me that a 2 would
no,
last
I
longer
know
than a
to be
5.
totally honest I think I would agree. I think a 5 would last longer.
Oh, you really do?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Because I think your really good point was about the invisibility thing
Mhm,
because
mhm.
like even if they didn't really last in like a social group, I think that they could survive on their own
Yeah,
too.
yeah, I
Um,
agree.
so no, I think out of those two, I think as two would end up sacrificing themselves at some point.
Right. It wouldn't
So
be
that's
for
very
nothing.
noble. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
super noble, and my hat is off to you. But
Yeah.
I don't think twos would really last necessarily.
Mm, mm. So I think we agree
Yeah,
the 5 would last longer
yeah.
than the 2. Oof. Um, I
Oh, I
actually
had one more point though for twos.
okay,
Is
okay.
in a stressful
Oh.
place they would go to an 8, which when we discuss eights, I think eights will probably do really, really well.
Yeah.
Um, but it's
Okay.
more like the negative side of 8 anyway, so I don't know
Mhm.
how well that would serve them in the end.
That's true. That is a factor,
Yeah.
is all of our numbers are gonna be in stress points.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna see a little dip because like a 5 goes to a 7 in stress, and we are not organized. We are
Yeah.
very scatterbrained,
Yeah.
um, very impulsive. And so you're right, it could have an effect. You know what? I think we should roll for this one because now I'm kind of thinking maybe the 2 would last longer.
Okay.
Okay. Ooh, I got 11.
Got a 19.
The 2 it's gonna last longer than the 5. Okay, congratulations, 2. You're moving on up. You had a really good point though, because like 2s do go to 8 in stress,
Mhm.
and especially if they're protecting their people,
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything that's gonna stop you, like stop a
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
So, all right, you won this one.
I would like to point out that 7s go to 1 in stress, and we didn't discuss that, but okay.
Well, this is an episode we didn't prepare for. So, okay. So, the next matchup is a 4
Mhm.
versus an 8.
Mhm.
Which one do you want to argue?
Um, you choose.
Okay, I'll argue the 4.
Okay.
You can argue the 8.
Okay.
Okay. I don't even know where to start.
Well,
So
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
So like, okay, so 4s. They are individualistic. They
Mhm.
are the romantic types.
Mhm.
I imagine a 4 in this scenario. I feel like they would run as far away as they could
Mhm.
from the zombies and
Mhm.
form their own little like cult society where it's like
Mhm.
hippie dippy love fest kind of thing, and they're
Yeah.
just like, I don't know, they just drugged up like it's kind of like where how I see them coping with this
Yeah.
is just like just constantly kind of on the move. They become nomadic, and they're just,
Mhm.
instead of
Yeah.
like trying to stay put and fighting, I
Mhm.
see them becoming nomadic with a society of other people who have the same kind of beliefs,
Mhm.
and they just kind of are always kind of on the run, but they're still like enjoying being in nature and still
Mhm.
seeing like the beauty in everything.
Mhm.
And so I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that simply because they are going to be very nomadic, they could last longer than an
Mhm.
8, because an eight's going to want to fight.
Mhm. No, it's true, and I do kind of feel like being devil's advocate, I feel like 4s have probably dreamed up a zombie apocalypse at some point in their life and thought about it.
Mm,
So I don't know if they would have as much shell shock as some of the other
mm,
numbers
mm.
because they're like, oh, I've already,
fantasized
about how I would handle this. So I think that would kind of go in their favor. I
Mm-hmm.
think for eights, I mean, come on, eights are like the most energy.
Mm-hmm.
Super tough, don't take no crap from
Mm-hmm.
anyone. They are
Mm-hmm.
gonna be, like, the most amazing fighters. They're
Yes.
probably either they're gonna be the leader or they're gonna be, like, the right-hand man of the leader, like, the tough one
Right.
who,
The tough
like
one. Yeah.
yeah, like, "Oh, you need me to go take care of this? Okay, I'll do it," you know?
Right. Right.
The general. And so, yeah, I mean, there's definitely the possibility of them dying in combat.
Mm-hmm.
But they are going to fight tooth and nail harder than probably any other number.
True.
They're also probably going to. Eights are very strategic. So I feel like they would probably have a lot of ideas of how to, like, we need to, like in Walking Dead, they had to take a prison at one point. Like, they
Oof.
would know how to, like, surround the place and you do this and you do this and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, in my opinion, I definitely think that an 8 would probably last longer. I think you're right about, I think 4s would go off and do their own thing, but
Mm-hmm.
when it came down to actually having to fight zombies, I think 8s would last
Would
longer.
I agree, because I think eights. When I think of eights, I think of Dauntless from
Oh yeah,
Divergent,
for
which,
sure.
I mean, who didn't want to be Dauntless, right?
Yeah.
And I think of Amity for 4s, and
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
um, so it's, I just, and in the end, I feel like Dauntless lasted the longest, even in that
Mhm.
scenario,
Mhm.
of people who were just tough
Mhm.
um and fought, and I just, yeah, I mean, when it came to actually fighting the zombies,
Mhm.
I do think an 8 would outlast a
Mhm.
4. Um, but I think 4s would have a good run,
Yeah.
because they would figure out, hey, let's go out in nature, and let's try and just stay
Yeah.
away from that. So, but I do think we agree that 8s would last longer.
Mhm.
So let me add an 8 to the bracket here. Okay, we're getting close to the top one. So our next bracket, very similar numbers,
Mhm.
6 and 9.
Mhm.
I'll let you argue the 9
Okay.
since you're so close to 1.
Yeah.
I'll argue the 6. Just love this sigh.
Well,
What are you thinking?
this is a hard bracket because I don't think either of them would last super long, I'm not gonna lie. Because they're super similar, and I think our arguments will be very similar. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think we know 9s are the most adaptable number, and
Absolutely.
so they could fit in with any group. They
Mm-hmm.
could fit into basically any role. Like, if, they needed a soldier, they could be a soldier. If they needed a medic, they could be a medic. If they
Right,
needed,
right.
a child wrangler, they could do that. They could do any of the roles. So I think kind of in the same line as 2s, I think they would be really important
Mm-hmm.
to their group. Um, and we didn't even really talk about this with 4s, but I think it's similar to 9s. We know our 9s have very specific hobbies and
Mm-hmm.
interests.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might come across a 9 who, has been obsessed with samurai swords and, like, really knows how to use that, or,
True.
knows how to use a bow and arrow. So I think they could have potentially really, really useful skills.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the adaptability thing would help the 9 the most,
Right.
because they might not necessarily be the strongest fighter, but if they needed to go hide in the woods or hide in an old water tower or something, like, I think they can make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my argument.
Okay. Here's the 6
Mhm.
argument. They're prepared
Yeah.
for this.
Yeah.
Like, because 6s, imagine worst case scenario, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
6s are the one. Like, I know I said 5s would be doomsday preppers, but like 6s would for sure
Yeah.
be
That's
doomsday
true.
preppers. And so, like, they would have a bunker ready to go,
Yeah.
stocked with 30 years worth of food,
Yeah.
like, just already prepared
Mhm.
for this. I think they'd also be the ones who took up that hobby in preparation for this, where they took up that, like, weapon knife throwing or
Yeah.
bow and arrow or whatever. It may not be their default. I don't think they're fighters by default, but I
Mm-hmm.
do think in preparation for this, they would train in
Yeah,
this
but
area.
do they know that the zombie apocalypse is coming? Because that changes the rules,
Well,
Bethany.
but sixes always think the zombie apocalypse is coming. Like it's already
I
in their
don't know
head.
any sixes that actually have a bunker.
Okay, I know lots of sixes that have bunkers, so I'm
Because
just
that
kidding.
changes things if they knew that it was coming.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing is like that's my point is like, I think sixes already imagine worst case scenario,
Hmm.
and so they're prepared for it. They're prepared for a zombie apocalypse. They're prepared for a nuclear fallout. They're prepared for the worst case scenario, and so I think my six in this who I'm arguing for
Okay.
would already be prepared. Now, if it came to actually fighting, if they have the weapon that they've been training with,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I can see, like, I imagine Triss from Divergent being a
Mm-hmm.
six. She
Mm-hmm.
went from the selfless place to dauntless.
Mm-hmm.
I see that happening.
Yeah.
Um, and, but also, which could be a downside, both six and nines are self sacrificing.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that being a downfall
Mm-hmm.
of, a six going out for the one that they care and, taking a bullet for them kind of thing. But when it came to actually fighting, if they have the weapon they've trained, I think they'd be fine. If not, they may not win that fight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think you convinced me a nine would beat a six.
I don't think I'm convinced yet either.
Okay, well, we'll have to roll for it.
Okay.
Oh,
I
I
got
got
11.
I got a six.
Well, that's appropriate.
And that's appropriate. So the nine moves on. Oof. Okay. I'm just looking at the brackets here. We're down to our last two brackets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Our first bracket, we have the one versus the two. Which one do you want to argue?
Ones.
Okay. Go ahead.
I mean, I think I don't have much more to say because I feel like we already said it, but I think that in the end, I think ones have the leadership skills, I think they're prepared because we talk about how much ones also love to research.
It's
But
true.
then I think that they also have the adaptability, and I think for me, I think twos, I can see why they got this far, but I feel like they only have kind of like the one thing going for them is that they go to 8 in stress.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think that they would necessarily be all around super strong
Mm-hmm.
in a zombie apocalypse kind of scenario. Whereas I think the ones have enough healthy things going on because eventually, if they last long enough, it's not that they're not going to be in stress anymore, but they are going to adapt to this is the new way of life. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think once the numbers go back to their healthy, normal, this is everyday life kind of a thing, I think a one would last longer.
That's what I was gonna throw out was that
Mm-hmm.
ones go to 4 in stress
Mm-hmm.
and become emotional
Mm-hmm.
messes.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, would they get past the stress point, or would they give into this emotional, kind of chaos that happens with ones when they're stressed?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a good point. Like once they realize, hey, this is like everyday life, they'd go back to their kind of one self, but
Well,
they'd have to get to
having
that point first.
both my sister and my dad are ones, and I have seen them in stress.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, they do get emotional, but they still never lose. Like they're emotional because everything is so wrong and
Uh-huh.
they want to fix it. And
Mm.
that's like the motivation around why they're emotional. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think that they like lose themselves to their emotion and they can no longer see clearly and things like that. It's almost like they're so frustrated that they get emotional, but
Yeah.
I think that they still have that drive to like make it right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't foresee them becoming these like helpless puddles of emotion because they go to 4 in stress.
I was just trying to be dramatic. Okay. I'm trying to make a point for the 2 here. Because if I'm being honest, I do think a 1 will last longer than a 2. You're right. 2s pretty much have the fact that I think they'd be valuable to a social circle.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Super valuable, right? They're the heart. Okay. But at the same time, if it came to fighting, the thing they have going for them is going to an 8 in stress for sure. But I mean, 2s when they become 8s, they're not nice though. It's like they are the worst part of that 8. They're not, the strategic, leadery type of 8. They're the aggressive, angry type of 8. And so it's kind of like, that's great in a fight, but if you're going to be stressed for that long,
and I mean, I think we already made the point that we think eventually a 2 is probably going to self-sacrifice themselves.
Right.
So, which is very noble, but I don't. Whereas I could see like a 1 actually making it all the way through to there is like a cure and the world kind of goes back to normal kind of a thing.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I think of the heart of the show, like with Stranger Things, Mike is supposed to be the heart of the show, but Mike is like a wet sock.
Yeah.
And so like not that Mike is a 2. I don't think Mike is a 2, but it's like I don't know. When I think of the heart, I just think of Stranger Things and Mike being the heart. I'm like, no. He is not the heart. Not at all. And I think Will is more the heart than Mike is. But if I'm using Will as my example, I mean, I don't think Will's going to survive season 5 of Stranger Things, So I don't know. I think 1's going to last longer than 2.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to love you, but I don't think you're going to last longer than a 1. Okay.
Do we even have to argue this next one?
Yes.
Well, I'm married to a 9 and my mom is a 9 and I still don't think they would win.
Last longer than it. Okay, so the next bracket's 8 versus 9. And for those of you that don't have the visual in front of you. So the 8 versus the 9, who will last longer? So it's 2 totally different scenarios. Okay. 2 totally different people. 9s are adaptable. 8s, I don't think, are so adaptable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
All right. I think 8s will see fight. And I can also see them dying very quickly because they are fighting constantly. I also can see an 8 causing problems in a social group.
Yeah. And actually, now that I think about it, I mean, 9s, when they're in health, they have little bits of every single number. So they can pull on, their 8 and their 1 and their, all the numbers that we thought would do pretty well. So actually, I could kind of see that happening. And imagine I could see my husband doing that. My mom, I think, would be too self-sacrificing. And I could see her going the way of a 2. And being very valued, but end up sacrificing herself. But my husband, I think he could last pretty long, actually.
Well, and you think about Brandon's skill set, too.
Yeah.
He is very nature-oriented. He knows a lot about a lot of things. And he kind of gets obsessed with things,
That's
and
very true.
So I do think that he would. Also, 9s go to 6 in stress. And so they're going to be, I can see them if there is like news of a zombie apocalypse happening. I could see them start researching and trying to figure out, what's the scenario here. Yeah. Whereas 8s, if they were like, there's a zombie apocalypse happening, I'd be like, and 8 would be like, whatever. I got it. Yeah. Life still goes on, you know, kind of thing.
Wow.
So, but we also have to argue for the 8.
Well, I mean, I think the argument kind of still stands for the 8s is that they're super tough and they're leaders and they don't take no crap and they are more self-preservation kind of a thing. So yeah, it's looking at the zombie apocalypse from 2 very different viewpoints. So I don't know. I'm kind of befuddled. I really thought it 8, but then you kind of convinced me with the. And then I kind of did think about like how, I think my husband actually would
do well.
Would do well.
Okay, let's roll for this one
Okay.
because I don't think either of us is sure.
Are you rolling for 8 or 9?
I'll roll for 8.
Okay, I'm rolling for 9.
Oof.
I got a 4.
I got a 4.
Oh, wow.
We gotta roll again.
Do it again. I
All
got a
right.
15.
I got a 17.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, 8.
So I will applaud the 9
Yeah.
for lasting as long as they
Yeah.
did. Because that's pretty good. All right. And the final matchup, which this is gonna be hard.
Yeah.
Who will last longer? The 1 or the 8?
I know who I think would last longer.
Okay. And I'll argue the other side.
Okay. I think a 1 would last longer because I think all in all, being well-rounded, I think a 1 has it because I think they have the research, I think they have the adaptability, I think they have the like moral compass and like the motivation behind survival. But then on top of that, I think that they're still pretty darn tough. Um thinking about both my dad and my sister, I think they both would last pretty long.
I agree. I
Because
think they
they're
would last
pretty
pretty long.
tough
But
people.
would they last longer than an 8?
Well, I think my argument against 8 has also been my argument for 8 is that, they're fighters. And I think
Mhm.
there is a chance that they could die in combat because they
Mhm.
would fight and like
Mhm.
take the battle to the zombies or,
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
can take them, we can take over this prison or whatever. But
Mhm.
there might be casualties or there would be casualties, which I think could
Mhm.
be the 8. So I think the 1 would balance the fighting with the sheltering and the running and things
Mhm.
like that.
Okay.
So that's my argument.
I've had this in my back pocket. Are you ready?
Sure.
So here's why I think an 8 would last longer than a 1. I know several healthy 8s,
Mm-hmm.
and they are able to not only access the health side of them, which is a 2,
Mm-hmm.
but also using the unhealthy side of them to get back to that 8 sitter, which is a 5.
Okay.
And an 8 going to a 5 is going to withdraw, which could be helpful in a zombie apocalypse, withdraw a bit and do some research in order to kind of help solve that problem. And 8s are very strategic. All right. And so I think they would use the healthy 8s that I know, use both sides of their stress lines and their growth lines to be a well-rounded kind of person. An 8 in health goes to a 2, which we've talked about as a very, very valuable component of the social circle.
Yeah.
And so an 8 being able to access that 2 and be a helper and be the heart of the social circle, like that's awesome. So an 8 is a well-rounded individual as far as like being able to fight, being able to be the helper, and being able to be the researcher. Every 8 I know is very smart. Okay, and it probably comes from that being going to 5 and stress. So that's my argument. I think the 8 is very, very well-rounded individual if they're a healthy person. They're a very, very well-rounded individual. Like I think of my friend Mandy, I think of my uncle Jesse, who are all 8s, and I think they would be the last one surviving, honestly, because they have a lot of skills. They are fighters, but they're also very heartfelt. So that's my argument for the 8.
Well, I thought just doing this episode, I thought 8s would win in the whole
thing.
But I think we got to roll for this one. I've been very
Okay.
convinced by our arguments for 1s. And
Okay.
saying like, yeah, Captain America is a 1.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's true. Captain America is the 1.
because he's a leader, but also a fighter.
But Hulk is an 8, and Hulk has lasted like a long time.
That's true.
Okay. I'm rolling. I got, drum roll, I got a 14.
I got a 12.
8s are going to be our last surviving number, which, stereotypical. It's fine. I figured 8s would last the longest.
Yeah.
But we argued for every number, and I think a lot of numbers had a good run. So, but I also think 1s would last a long time. I do. All right. So, I hope you enjoyed this little make believe episode. I'm sorry if your number got kicked out early. Grace and I both feel the pain. So, but anyways, I don't know. We can do another scenario another time,
Yep.
and see. I don't know. It could be, I don't know. It doesn't have to be apocalypse type. It could be something else. We'll take suggestions too.
Yeah.
But I love this little make believe kind of thing. I've played D&D in the past. It's super fun, and just kind of assuming a role. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Well, we hope that you had a good time listening to this fun little episode, and we'll see you next time on Enneanerds.